So, today we're diving into the core argument of Karen Ha's book, Empire of AI. We're going to unpack how OpenAI, a company that was literally founded to save humanity from corporate greed, somehow ended up building a massive empire of its very own. The book kicks off with this really powerful quote, and it perfectly frames the intense, almost crusading culture inside OpenAI. The idea wasn't just to build another tech company. No, it was to forge a belief system, a mission so grand, so important, that it could justify almost any action taken in its name. So, what does an AI empire even mean? While the book argues these labs are acting just like empires of old, they grow through extraction. They're taking digital resources, like all of our data and artists' work. They're taking physical resources, like land and water. And, crucially, they're taking the hidden labor of human workers. And the whole thing is justified with this big, sweeping story about inevitable progress. But here's the thing. This empire didn't start with a plan for conquest. To really get what OpenAI became, you have to go back to its beginnings, which were, believe it or not, surprisingly noble. Okay, so rewind to 2015. OpenAI launches as basically the anti-Google. It's a nonprofit research lab, a benevolent force for good, meant to develop artificial general intelligence, or AGI, safely. Founders like Elon Musk were genuinely terrified that a for-profit company building AGI could be a disaster for humanity. The entire goal was to be a check on corporate power, not to become it. But that idealistic nonprofit dream, well, it was about to smash headfirst into a very harsh and very expensive reality. And what was that reality? It all came down to one thing: money. To even try to compete with the sheer computing power of a behemoth like Google, OpenAI needed capital on a scale that a nonprofit could never, ever raise. The mission was just too expensive for the model. And this is what forced the big pivot. In 2019, they had to restructure into this weird new thing called a capped profit company. Suddenly, the dream of being a nonprofit counterweight gave way to the reality of having to raise billions, which started with a massive investment from Microsoft and jumping headfirst into the very AGI race they were created to safeguard. With all that money flowing in, the company's focus got laser sharp on one thing: scale. The new religion was that bigger was the only way forward. And to give you a sense of how wild this got, GPT-4 was reportedly over 15,000 times larger than their very first model, GPT-1. That kind of exponential growth always has consequences. And this is where we really start to see the hidden costs of building an empire. The costs that get pushed out of sight so we don't have to think about them. You know how models like ChatGPT seem so friendly and harmless? Well, to make them that way, OpenAI uses a process called reinforcement learning from human feedback. But what that really means is that a low-paid, hidden workforce has to manually filter out all the toxic, violent, and just plain horrific content that the AI learns from scraping the internet. The book details the truly harrowing experience of data labelers in Kenya, who were hired through a third-party contractor. For incredibly low pay, these workers were exposed to a constant, relentless stream of the absolute worst of humanity. We're talking child abuse, graphic violence, and other stuff that's just deeply, deeply disturbing, all day, every day. The result, of course, was documented psychological trauma. The clean, helpful, friendly interface that you and I get to use is made possible only by the hidden trauma of real people on the other side of the world. But beyond the human toll, there is a staggering environmental cost. The book actually calls these massive AI models monstrosities of resource consumption. The data centers that power them need the same amount of energy as a small city and just an unfathomable amount of water to stay cool. And to put a number on it, just training GPT-4 at a single data center in Iowa reportedly used up 11.5 million gallons of water in just 1 month. This is a completely unsustainable level of consumption, especially when you remember the models just keep getting bigger and bigger. So you've got all these pressures building up, right? The tension between the nonprofit mission and the for-profit reality, between the shiny image and the dirty costs. Well, something had to give, and it all came to a head in a very, very public way. You probably remember this. In November 2023, the nonprofit board suddenly fired CEO Sam Altman, saying they'd lost trust in him. But the empire struck back hard. You had intense pressure from Microsoft, the threat of investor lawsuits, and nearly every single employee threatening to walk out. Within days, the board was forced to reverse its decision. Altman came back, and he was more powerful than ever before. Now here's the absolute wildest part. After a crisis that was fundamentally about the company's safety mission, you'd think the market would punish them, right? Nope. It rewarded them. The company's valuation skyrocketed, proving once and for all that the commercial engine had completely and totally overpowered the original nonprofit guardrails. And this brings us right back to the book's central and pretty sobering argument. What is the real price we're paying for this very specific vision of AI progress? The way AI is developing right now is not some force of nature. It's not inevitable. It's the result of thousands of choices made by a very small and very fallible group of people. The book argues that as it stands, the incredible benefits of this empire are flowing upwards, while the immense social and environmental costs are being pushed downwards, onto the most vulnerable and, more often than not, hidden from view. So that leaves us with a final, really challenging question. Can we, through demands for real transparency, accountability, and better governance, actually influence the future of AI? Or has this path of relentless extraction and growth already locked us in for the ride?